Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of the Manly Family Podcast. My name is Glenn Minturn, your podcast host, and today we want to acknowledge the Kondamuka people, the traditional owners of Nalung, where Manly State School now stands, and recognise these lands have always been places of teaching and learning. Today, we're joined by Helen and Karina to talk about structured literacy and capability building. This is going to be an interesting one today, and there's a lot of things that I've got to talk to you ladies about. So let's just start by working out who is who in the zoo. Karina, tell us a little bit about your role here at Manly first up.
So I'm the learning support teacher. So I teach any children who are going to be struggling a little bit academically. They will come in contact with me.
You work with kids of all ages, right across from P to 6?
Yep, kids of all ages, prep to 6, and usually in a small group format.
And how did you get to this role? What's been your journey to get you to this point in your career?
So I've been teaching for over 20 years, about 25 years. I started actually as a high school teacher, but didn't last very long in that. After I graduated, I pretty much didn't teach for very long in Australia and moved overseas for about 6 years, and then came back and I've worked in Australia since then. But yeah, I was a classroom teacher for many years before moving into the learning support role 4 years ago.
So Helen, where do you fit into the school? What's your role here at Manly?
So I have two roles. I'm a classroom teacher of Year 2, a lovely group, and also I'm the pedagogical coach here at Manly, which probably seems like a weird title, but I can explain that if you like.
Well, we're going to talk more about that in a future podcast, but also, you know, the learning support is on there that you work, and again, you're working with your class and I guess in other areas right across the school.
Right across the school, with teachers from prep through to Year 6.
And what about your journey to this point? How did you get to here?
I started out, nearly 27 something years ago as a preschool teacher. I always wanted to be an early childhood teacher, preschool teacher, and moved around a bit doing that, and then decided to join the department. So I did some relief teaching, and that led me to teach in a multi-age school for about 10 years, which I loved. And then finally came to Manly, and I've been here ever since, so enjoying it.
So for today's conversation, what do you think is the overall goal that we're going to get out of talking to you today? What are the main aspects that we're going to have a look at?
I think we're going to have a look at the structured literacy approach, which is the approach that Manly has adopted with regards to literacy instruction, and how this is beneficial for all children, not just the learners I deal with who are having some kind of challenge.
Well, let's start with structured literacy. Why is there a need to change?
So previously, the instructional approach was, with regards to literacy, was what was referred to as whole language or balanced literacy, which was different in that we tended to focus more on memorisation of whole words, words in context, making meaning from context, which might have relied on things like guessing when we're reading. So now we have an approach that looks at what are the core skills of learning to read, write and spell, and we explicitly teach those skills.
So we've been talking about the structured literacy program, and Karina has sort of started that process. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and some of the components that make that up?
Yeah, sure. So structured literacy is an approach to teaching literacy that we know works for all children. So children who might have some risk in terms of developing their core skills in literacy, as well as any child, no matter how well they're performing. And yes, it is made up of different components, from things like phonological awareness, so children's most early interactions with language and sound and speech patterns, things like rhyme, through to phonemic awareness and phonics, where they start to assign sounds to letters and then putting those together to make words, spelling and writing, all the way through to things like morphology and etymology and where words come from and how we can use a base to create different words. So it encompasses all the aspects of literacy. at different levels of involvement from prep through to year 6, depending on the age of the student.
To do this properly, you've got to have a plan. How do you guys work together to sort of make this all come together?
So that's very big picture.
Yeah.
So we need to establish what we're currently doing. We needed to establish what we're currently doing, and then we needed to look at what the evidence says we need to do and how well what we're doing aligns with that or not. And then we need to look at the aspects that we need to change and create a long-term plan for that to happen, which needs to happen in stages so that teachers don't become overwhelmed with the amount or number of changes that they're being asked to make.
I can imagine this is a real collaboration approach.
Absolutely. It doesn't work unless you've got good relationships established.
So what does this one bring to the table from your perspective?
I work really closely with Helen. I don't think I could do my job without Helen. We're like two sides of the same coin sometimes. But Helen provides the adult learner, the coaching expertise, as well as the experience of an incredibly good classroom teacher that we both rely on her ability to organise us both and to establish the pace of that plan, I think, in a lot of ways. So I rely on Helen a lot for that.
Karina was talking about the planning process and working together, and she obviously had some very nice things to say about you, and I'm sure you feel the same way. But for your perspective, that element of collaboration, it must be so important, and to know that you've got someone that you're working with that understands the process and comes together as that two-sided coin.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's essential. It is too big a field for any one person to be expert, and so you need to draw on the strengths of your colleagues. And Karina has a wealth of knowledge around research in this field, and has studied and it continues to study in that area. So I sort of see her as my go-to person for latest, most recent research around literacy, and then what I can bring to that is the how we go about teaching that. But I could not do my role without her. There's too much to know.
Something I know, this isn't a fast race. It's a slow and steady process, and I think it's important that we talk about that, because it's not something bang done today. It is a process, and slow and steady does win the race.
It absolutely does, and I think that we've got evidence of that here at Manly. We've been on this journey long before we used the term structured literacy. So
yes.
About 7 years now, we've been exploring our practice, holding it up against research, at times feeling a bit uncomfortable about perhaps what we have done in the past, and looking at how we can improve. So without that background, what we're doing now wouldn't be possible, because we already have a staff who are absolutely committed to engaging in best practice.
Yep.
And without that as our background, we couldn't take these next steps, which are quite challenging. And we also need a lot of trust amongst us as a staff to do that.
How important is it to build and develop this toolkit? Because that's effectively what it is, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of planning that goes into it to make it happen. But obviously to build it, develop it, and implement it, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yes, so a lot of this is dependent on teacher knowledge. So building that toolkit of teacher knowledge is super important. If teachers have a body of knowledge that they can draw on, then that can inform all of the instructional decisions they need to make during a day. It can also inform the why you might need to change your practice. If it doesn't align with evidence, then teacher can draw on their knowledge of what the evidence says in order to modify their practice themselves, without someone needing to necessarily be really prescriptive in telling them what they need to do. If they've got the knowledge, then they'll make the changes themselves over time.
What sort of input do the teachers have back into this program?
That's very much part of Helen's role, but it's a constant dialogue between where we're at, where we need to be, and it relies completely on that dialogue and that exchange of knowledge over time to change or refine practices.
And obviously, to have that program here at Manly, it just goes hand in hand with everything else that happens in the school. I've been so impressed with how everything comes together, student success, the learning, the outdoor activities. There are so many things to love about it, but it is another one of the key pieces that makes this school what it is, isn't it?
Oh, I think absolutely. Yeah, I think Manly has done a really good job of acknowledging that things needed to change, and this is not exclusive to Manly. This has been acknowledged in a number of reports that have been released recently, and I think we've done a really good job of managing that change process in a way that's doable for staff.
We just talked about having a toolkit. The role of coaching, how important is that, and where does that fit into this whole program?
Yeah, so that's my other role at the school as pedagogical coach, and I very much see that as walking alongside my colleagues. So sometimes kind of having that view ahead to what the next couple of steps might be while walking alongside as well. The most important thing there is relationships.
Yes.
As we know as educators with our students, without relationships, you're not going to get the outcomes you want.
Yes.
And it's the same with adult learners. So building trust with my colleagues, getting to know one another, inviting them into my own teaching space, knowing that it's okay to make mistakes as we learn.
Well, that's fundamental too, isn't it?
It is. And teachers aren't good at that. Teachers are not good at thinking it's okay to make a mistake, even though that's exactly how we teach our children.
Yes, yeah.
We're not good at our own taking that advice. So this is where trust is really important. So the coaching is very much designed to support teachers in terms of their level of need. So some teachers I'll work one-on-one with. Other teachers are more comfortable to just engage in whole staff professional development. So it's a very much a differentiated approach to how we coach our staff.
I'm going to ask you both. Is it working?
Early data says yes, it is.
Yeah.
And that's been really affirming. We use our progress monitoring data to let us know that's one way of knowing whether the children are making progress or not. And that often comes down to, has their risk profile improved? Are they less at risk in their terms of their core skills of reading than they were before? And we're seeing some really, really pleasing signs that yes, it is working.
I'm going to ask you the same question from your perspective. How are we doing?
I think we're doing really well. I think we were all down in the bottom of the learning pit for quite a while, feeling really uncomfortable. And how I know we're slowly climbing out is that we're having more conversations as a staff now of, I understand now. I can see the gain. I see the difference this is making in my students, and that's prompting me to want to keep climbing up out. And as opposed to, this is really difficult, I'm feeling really uncomfortable, which is where we all sit when we're right in the bottom of the pit there. So I think that shift in the conversations we're having collegially is evidence that.
And is this something you have discussions with external, like with other schools, other teachers, other people who are doing the same sort of role as you, to compare and talk and discuss about growing this program? Or is it really sort of centred here at the school?
It's really been here because it's a fairly new approach, I guess, at a department level, and not necessarily prescribed that way. We haven't got too many networks happening yet. We certainly have conversations where we can with other colleagues when we interact, and certainly informally between teachers I know outside of school. But this has really been about building this together here at Manly and drawing on all the expertise we have here. And so that has been challenging.
Yeah,
most definitely.
And just finally for you, for those parents that probably don't necessarily feel like they can ask questions about it, I guess that's invited, because you want them to be a part of the community, a part of the understanding, and contribute to the overall learning of their kids.
Absolutely, and that is very much encouraged. We know our parents at Manly are really invested in their children's education. and we want them to feel comfortable to ask us questions about what we're doing and why we are doing it and how we are doing it. And because our teachers are at different stages of their understanding, they can come and ask anybody, and engage with their child's classroom teacher, reach out to one of us. We're really happy and very excited to talk about it because we are so passionate about the difference this is making.
It's evident too, and I love the passion, and I've seen it so much through all the podcasts we've done. If you want to know more, get in touch with the ladies through the school. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back after these key dates, we're going to find out a little bit about these two ladies outside of the school on our Manly Family Podcast.
Here's what's coming up at Manly State School. Wednesday, May 1st, Pay It Forward Uniform Free Day. Monday, May 6th, Labor Day Public Holiday. Tuesday, May 7th is Walk to School with Mum Morning and PNC's Mother's Day Stall Day.
There you go, some of the key dates we've had to look at for the next few weeks here at Manly. We've had a chance to talk to these incredible ladies, but we want to know a little bit more about you as people now, and this is sometimes a little bit of a Pandora's box. So, Karina, I'm going to start with you. Outside of school, do you have some hobbies or interests, or maybe things that people wouldn't know that you are interested outside of school?
I love travel.
Yes.
So I spent a large chunk of my 20s travelling and working, and I still like to do that with my family. I also love reading and learning about history, which I think ties in with my love of travel.
Oh, absolutely.
But I've also recently gotten into Pilates, and I'm totally obsessed by it.
So how good is that? You can travel to anywhere in the world, have an understanding of their history, and be able to do Pilates anywhere, anytime.
Doesn't get any better than that.
Do you have a favourite destination out of everywhere you've been? Is there one that stands out? I know it's a little bit like asking who's your favourite child or whatever the case may be, but do you have a favourite place that you visited?
Italy.
Yeah.
I love Italy. I love the food, I love the culture.
They do culture so different to us.
Yeah. I actually know one thing I love is their love of children.
Yes.
Children are very much at the heart.
But
of their
family
culture.
itself is very different to how we do family. And that was the thing I enjoyed more than anything. All right, going to Italy, are you a coffee drinker?
No, I'm not actually.
Wow.
No, I'm actually not. I'm a tea drinker. So, yeah, but there's plenty of other things there to enjoy.
There most certainly is that. All right, so food, because you've travelled a lot, is there a love of food from a particular country? I mean, Italy obviously has great food, but is there something that is your go-to food?
Well, other than Italian, probably Japanese.
Yeah.
I like Japanese cuisine. Yeah, that's probably my next favourite, apart from Italian cuisine.
All right, and just finally, if you weren't doing this job, is there some other job, maybe throughout your life you thought, I'm going to be a...
No, never.
Never. This is
Not
it.
really. Travel guide? I don't know. No, possibly an academic working in the area of history.
Yeah.
Lecturing history. That's probably the only other thing I would have enjoyed as much as I do teaching.
Helen, it's your turn. Mm-hmm. All right. So you know where we're going with this now because we've had a little bit of an insight. Outside of school, what are some of your interests, hobbies, things that you like to do away from the school grounds?
Yeah, that's a tough one because a lot of my brain space is still wrapped up in what's going on here and being excited about that and reading. But when I managed to put it to one side, I'm very much a family person.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most interesting things that I've done over the last couple of years is my hubby and I went for a sunrise walk every day for a year. That was amazing, no matter what the weather. Just incredible. I wish I was still doing it, but
that's
once you step out of it, it's hard to get back.
Yeah.
And then I also love spending time with my sisters and my mum. Both my sisters have grown-up children now, so we're free to go off and have adventures because they don't need their mums anymore. So we've started doing fun things together, ranging from we went to a fancy high tea recently to we're going to go to an art class soon, painting, totally out of my comfort zone.
But isn't that great?
It's great. I love doing things that are out of my comfort zone. And my younger sister last year invited us all to go axe throwing. So I went, okay.
Well, I wish you'd told me that before.
But I won, I just want to say. And if my
Nothing competitive there amongst the sisters and family?
I just want them to, Hashtag Helen won an X-ray. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
I really had no idea. So we're all trying to choose different things to up the ante a bit. So
Well, we know someone doesn't like coffee. They like tea. Are you a
yes.
tea or coffee drinker?
won't hold it against her. I like both, but I love coffee.
Yeah.
I'm a coffee
Do you have a
drinker.
go-to coffee?
Probably a soy latte.
That's fantastic, because that's exactly what
Oh,
I
really?
have. We'll have to have one
Great
of those
taste,
afterwards.
yes.
Your favourite food? Do you have a favourite go-to? Something that you know, if you had the choice, that one meal I'm going to have.
Well, you know what? I never knew this about Karina, but mine are also Italian and Japanese. Probably
Yeah.
a vegetarian lasagna would be my go-to.
Yum. Do you make a vegetarian lasagna?
I do, sometimes. And of course, I love a vegetarian bento box.
Oh, look at. I think we should all go out for lunch.
think
I think that would be great. All right, and your question too. Put all that aside. I'm thinking you're probably similar. You've had this one goal the whole time. But is there one other career that maybe somewhere along the line you thought, yeah, I'd like to be a...
Well, probably I would say yes. I know that when I was young, I always wanted to be a teacher. But, you know, throughout my life, I've looked at other careers and thought, I wouldn't mind that. For example, flying a plane, being a pilot.
being a
but
pilot.
I think I'm too short. And an aged care worker.
Wow.
Yeah, and I know that was always in my mind when I was young too, but teaching trumped, so.
Well, that's fantastic. Ladies, thank you so much for opening up on those questions as well. And thank you for sharing your story about the incredible work that's being done here at Manly State School. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and will join us again for our next episode of the Manly Family Podcast.